So now that we've assembled our plunger, the next logical thing to include would be the flippers, so we don't have to always lose the ball down the drain. And let's take a look at the actual flipper artwork for this, because undoubtedly you guys are going to want to create your own flippers, and they can be of any size. The key thing with them, to get these guys working perfectly, is to make the pivot point of the flipper, art-wise, dead center in the image. Okay, so normally you'd probably think, oh, I'm going to crop my image something like this, right? But you actually don't want to do that here. So you'll notice that if I just kind of have this selected, keep your eye on these two little dots right here. They're right in the middle of the image, and you can kind of imagine a little line going right through here, and this would be the pivot point of the flipper. And of course, obviously the same thing is true on the horizontal axis. So you're just leaving a bunch of extra space out here, and I've included, along with all the other artwork that you can pull from here, the actual flash files that I use to create the flippers. So if you want, something other than like Photoshop to kind of redraw them in, you could use Adobe. I need to start saying animate now. One of the stranger renaming choices. So I've dragged out here another color sprite, and I'm just going to texture it with, I might have actually called this right flipper. There it is. So since that's the right one, let's move it over to here. And I've already got in the property list over here let's see, it looks like I chose the name Flipper Right for that one, Flipper Left, and we'll include a wall flipper as well. So let's go and match up those names. Of course, you can name these things anything you want, whatever makes it, so that you recognize it. This was Flipper Right, and as usual, to interact with it with the property list, we're going to give it a custom class, and this is going to be, you guessed it, Flipper. Then let's go down to here and set the alpha mask for the physics body. And what you can do at this point is kind of get an idea of how low or how high your flipper is going to go. So over here in the rotation, let's try -30. Okay, so that obviously makes the flipper appear to go upward, and then the bottom range is it's going to be set to 30. I don't actually have the exact specs on this, but I believe flippers go up and down about 60 degrees. So you want to kind of keep to something like that. So even though, it might start like at a sharper angle, it's probably only going to go up about 60. But that just depends on, hey, your game. You can do whatever you want. So let's go ahead and copy this guy. And of course, we will change this now to left flipper, and you can see the rotation has a opposite effect on it when it's the artwork is turned over that way. And let's give this a name of Flipper Left, and we're going to make that one go down to -30. But of course, the property list is really the end all for defining those angles. And when you're getting this set up, what you probably want to do is kind of imagine a smooth line going down from your ramps onto the flipper. So I can already tell that this one's a little bit too low. I'm going to bump it up just a bit. And I'm about to forget that I need to toggle off affected by gravity, allows rotation, and even though the flippers at times are dynamic, initially you can go ahead and set them to being not dynamic. They're going to become dynamic as you flip them, and then when you lower them, they're going to become non-dynamic again. So it creates kind of a more of a harder kind of up and down with them. So I released a pinball game 5 years ago now, and one of the complaints was that the flippers felt kind of soft. Okay, so from that I kind of learned that, all right, people that are really into pinball want their flippers to kind of have this very abrupt stop, and it's true, that is how flippers tend to work. Another thing you're going to do for the flippers is click on pinned, and what that does, remember that little center point that we talked about, it's going to pin the flipper to this exact location, so it kind of just helps it lock into this particular place. And let's go ahead and be sure that we do that on both of our flippers. And you know what? I'm having a little trouble selecting them. You'll notice I keep going over here. And I could just put up the Z depth on these. That makes it a lot easier to grab these guys. Because when selecting things, what Xcode does is it prioritizes the things that are layered on top. So now I should be able to go and just select these guys like that. And if it's not going to hurt you, at runtime, if it has really no bearing on it, then go ahead by all means set up those things that you want to select easier with a higher Z position. Okay, so I've got that pinned in there, and let's take a look at the properties for these. So we've got for flipper left a upper rotation of 30, lower rotation of negative 30. Kind of common sense right there. When you have left and right flippers, they tend to have the exact opposite upper and lower rotation. So you'll notice that on the flipper right, the upper rotation is negative 30 and lower is now 30, just the exact opposite of those. And the right flipper and left flipper properties specify whether or not it is going to react to somebody touching on the left or right side of the screen, or using the directional pad on the external game controller or the Apple TV remote. If you're touching the right side, it's going to move up right flippers, right? You can actually have flippers that react to both sides. So if you wanted to do that for one of these, you could put in here yes and yes, and it's just always going to flip regardless of what side it's on. And then the Y impulse, I think 2500 is a good value for this particular size flipper. You're going to want to change that if you make a size that's a lot different. Tinker around with it. If you raise this up too much, you might notice, obviously the ball is going to go a lot faster when it kicks off of the flipper. And there is kind of a danger zone if it gets too high where the sprite kit basically starts skipping over, registering it colliding with certain things. So don't make it too quick. But as it is, the ball really flies around the table reliably well. So back over here, there is one last little step to really making these flippers perfect. If I were to build right now, they're going to run pretty darn good. There's this last step though involves creating what I call in terminology of the kit a flipper stop, and all you have to do is, let's just give this any old name, flipper stop bottom. Give this a custom class of FlipperStop, and then what we're going to do is take the color down so we don't have to see that obnoxious just red square. So take the opacity down, and then let's give it a physics body, just a bounding rectangle. Toggle off all of these so this is not going to move anywhere, and then just adjust the shape of it. I'm going to make it so that it spans across both of these flippers, and then on one of them what I'm going to do is bump up the rotation to its highest point, and then I'm going to lower this flipper stop. Again, this is one of those things that I could increase the Z position of, and move this down to right about exactly where this would collide with it at its upper rotation. And what this helps to do is, again, really lock in that as soon as it connects with this, the flipper is going to stop becoming dynamic. So again, it's more of a hard stop. Otherwise, what you could potentially see is the flipper maybe go a little bit past this, right? Kind of its own worst enemy is the amount of impulse it is going forward with, right? So again, that locks it in. So anytime you're going to have a flipper, I'd recommend including in here a flipper stop as well. And by the way, just a little fun fact: if you're ever curious about the custom classes that we're using, they just all relate to classes inside of our table classes folder. So you can see flipper stop, flipper. We're going to get to all of these in the lessons, and we need to focus in on the table objects a lot more. We'll do a much more advanced lesson on those. Not advanced, but I'll describe all the properties video-wise. So we're just about done. If you want to go ahead and kind of test yourself and put the wall flipper in there, go for it. I'll just kind of quickly do it over here. So I'm just going to bring this guy up. And again, you can put this anywhere you want. And by all means, please create a drastically different table than the one you're looking at now. Okay, so I believe in the property list I have the settings for this at 0 and -60. So -60 is the lower rotation, so 0 is the upper one. And what I'm going to do, type that in at 0, and then I'm just going to take this FlipperStop, let's call it FlipperStop wall, so I can kind of identify it a little bit better, and then just maybe kind of move it down like that. Now this FlipperStop is never going to stop the ball. I should have maybe made that clear earlier. The only thing it's ever going to interact with is this flipper over here. And again, by default, when I run this, all the flippers are going to go back down to their lower rotation. But if you want to just kind of see it at its lower rotation, go ahead and just type that in there. Let's do it for this one as well. So this is 30, and we should be ready to test this. And there you have it. So clicking over here, looks like I could probably raise this flipper up just a little bit, although as usual what you see in the simulator is not what you're going to see in the actual device. So that flipper might actually be going all the way up there, yep, they are in there. And let's move on to the next topic.